So there's a lot of talk about boars during this time period.
Yeah.
Being hunted was ham, really one of the more common foods people had.
Ham was incredibly common, even amongst the poor, maybe even especially amongst the poor, for a lot of different reasons. So, first and foremost, you don't feed pork. You take it out into the woods, you put a tag on its ear, or you brand it with a number, and it feeds itself. Then you just bring it in when it's time to butcher it, and you cook it, and that's that. It takes well to salting, so I can make salt pork that will last at room temperature for months.
I am glad to see
you can smoke ham, like bacon, which is a combination of salting and smoking, and you can dehydrate it, pickle it, pickled ham hocks. You've heard of those, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And so pork was anybody could raise it, and it was inexpensive in the Middle Ages, and so people did. It was cheaper to raise than anything except maybe chickens. I think chickens were probably a little cheaper because you can keep those in the city, whereas the pork, you let your pork loose in the forest, and they would just feed themselves. They would dig up.
That's also why they had Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were.
Keep going.
That's also why they had, you talk about town commons or city commons, but that's why they had commons. It was common area where people could have their livestock, like their chickens. Well, not as much chickens, but like their pigs, like their cows. And that was a common feeding area, so people could let their pig loose with its ear tag or its collar and know that, that's Larry's pig and that's Jesse's pig and that's, whoever's pig, and they're just going to all eat in that same area, so even people in the city could have some livestock in a limited manner.
They were also really good for clearing out woodlands too, to make fields, because they root. And they go after mushrooms and acorns, and they really dig up the soil and loosen it up, so that after they've worked the field, if you have a herd of them, the farmer can go in there and pull out the trees and the roots and the stumps a lot easier after the pigs have been through it too.
So it's something that does the work for you.
Exactly.
It does the work for you.
Absolutely. Same reason that they carried they had goats on the farm too. They would take down all of the underbrush and stuff. They would clear a field of everything else that the sheep, the horses wouldn't eat.
So what you do, if you're a poor person working a small kitchen garden, is you let your goats go in, and they take down everything that's not nailed down, because they will eat anything. And then you take them out, and if you've got stumps left in there, you can drill holes into it and put corn cobs, or back then they would have put nuts or berries, anything that they thought the pigs would want to eat, and you put them way down deep in the hole, and the pigs will go and they will uproot the trees for you, trying to get at the treats. And so that gets your trees out, and then you bring your chickens in, and they come and they take down all the bugs and the seeds and things that are going to mess up your field, and they turn all of the soil over for you, and they fertilize it, and then the next year you get to have nice fertile soil that you don't have to deal with trying to cut through turf and trees and stuff.
Oh wow.
Poor man's way of dealing with a field.
Okay, so you'd have your own workforce cut out for you.
And they did it in smaller plots than we do farming nowadays too. I mean, we think of commercial farming, and they did acres and acres and acres and acres and acres of monoculture, and the traditional farmer that was just farming for their family, it was multi-crop. Some of it was just stuff out in the woods that grew wild. Some of it was garden plot, and some of it was various kinds of animals that would also help take care of everything. And they could do it on a much smaller, and then whatever they had extra on, they would trade with other families that grew different crops and had different animals. So the whole community would help each other out. You didn't have to grow or raise everything, because your neighbors in the community would help each other out with trade by doing it that way.
Okay.
And they did it in much smaller lots, much smaller plots than what we think of as farming today. You didn't need that much land to raise your small animals for milk and eggs and meat. The males were raised for meat. We think of meat chickens now, and that's not how they did it. It was when they stopped laying,
You ate them.
you ate them. Or if it was a rooster and you had 3 of them, you only need 1. You get rid of the other roosters. So that's how they had meat, and they made the meat stretch. It wasn't like we eat today where there was meat at every meal. It's not how it was at all. One piece of meat might last the whole week. It would start off as this, it would become this, and then by the end the bones would become broth.
Yeah.
So you didn't need a lot in the same sense that we did. Most of their stuff was vegetarian. A lot of vegetables, a lot of fruit, stuff that they could forage, stuff that they could grow.
Yeah.
And everything was cooked. They cooked their fruit. I don't know why. It has to do with the humors, and I never really understood the whole humors thing with medieval cooking. But they had a hearty disapproval or dislike of anything raw. So this is unusual in that I have a salad and I have shrimp, but the shrimp are cooked, so I guess that makes it acceptable.
Makes it less heathenish.
It makes it less heathen. I don't know. But
like when they had fried or roasted the vegetables.
Yeah.
Boiled them.
Stewed them.
Steamed them.
If they
Yeah.
didn't cook it, they would have done something like pickling.
Yeah. Pickles, kimchi, or not kimchi necessarily, but like kimchi, sauerkraut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of different things.
Okay, so it would have been more of maybe a sauerkraut shrimp sandwich.
Well,
Right, so-
the carrots could absolutely be pickled. Eggs could be pickled.
Oh yeah.
The cucumbers, if you have the right kind, they become pickles. So yeah, there was a lot of different ways that they were able to, if they grew too much and they didn't trade, they wanted to save it for the times when it wasn't growing. They didn't have canning the way that we do, so they found other ways. They had big crocks that they would put things in with their vinegars and their wines, and honey. That was another way to preserve fruit if you dehydrated it, and meat too. You know.
So they just dip it in honey, like
Honey,
they do.
yeah, honey ham. Well, honey. So the trick to keeping food good is no sun. You have to get the water content down, and you have to have something that makes sure that bugs and bacteria can't get into it. So when you smoke it, you're dehydrating the meat. So you have to have a low percentage of water for the bacteria to grow. So dehydrating fruit and meat, that's why it's safe. You don't cook it.
So
You actually
yeah.
dehydrate it raw.
So would they just leave it over like a fire and
They would do
let
either
the smoke?
they would do it out in the sun with like nets and stuff out, or they would do it over like rails, little thin sticks or whatever. They could also do it over smoking. What they would do is they would make a very smoky fire, or in a smokehouse, and you would wrap it with either a hide or a blanket.
Or burlap.
A burlap, some kind of fabric, so it would keep the smoke in there. And you would have an air hole down on the bottom where you feed the fire, and it would tunnel up. There would be a little air hole on the top, and all of the meat would be on little rods of whatever you'd set it up on, and it would dehydrate it very, very slowly, and it would smoke it. Honey ham. Honey was another way to, because the water content is very low, and the sugar content is very high.
Honey is anaerobic.
Yep, it becomes so there's no oxygen in it.
And there's no
Why?
oxygen, that means there's no germs.
Bacteria.
Awesome. Sanitation and
No, they didn't understand the
How it
germ.
worked.
Yeah, they didn't understand about what germs were, but they understood that if you left meat sitting out, it produced maggots. And maggots are not good.
And it made you ill,
Yeah.
even if you didn't see maggots. So, and the same thing with other things. They understood that it wasn't good. It's actually funny when I talk to people who are of Jewish descent in practice, and the ones that have you listen to them talk where they have 2 refrigerators and they had 2 sets of things that they eat off of, and the milk and the cheese and stuff is kept very separate from other things. Well, you have to think about, it became religious stricture, but it actually started off for a really good reason. They lived in a very, very warm place where things spoiled very quickly. And the things that spoiled very quickly were things like milk and meat. So they kept those foods very separate, and they kept the dishes separate because, again, it was very hard to keep things clean. So if you kept the things that spoiled easily away from the other things that didn't, probably a good guess. That's where it all started, and it became people would do it if the religious people in their community said, hey, so God told us that this would be the best way not to die, and look, it works. But it probably started off from figuring out that meat spoiled and dairy spoiled, but if you kept things separately, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna put the ham on, and I'm not lidding this, obviously, because it's too big. But we're just gonna boil it. This is already a pre-cooked smoked ham, so it just needs to be warmed, really. I'm gonna let it cook for a few hours, and then I'm gonna cut it up and put it out for people to eat as finger food.
Awesome.